Alpha King Elias Thorn let the pack look at Margot Elian's body before he remembered she had a face. That was the part she would carry longest. Not the cold terrace stone beneath her bare feet. Not the silver inspection robe tied too loosely at her shoulder. Not the watching rows of nobles perfumed in moonflower oil, while half the lower pack stood hungry for spectacle. It was his silence. Elias sat beneath the black antlered arch of Moonveil Terrace, his dark hair wind-tossed, his wolf-gold eyes unreadable, his crown of thorned silver resting heavy on his brow. He looked like judgment carved from winter. Once, years ago, he had looked at Margot as if she were warmth. Now he looked through her while Beauty-Seer Lavinia Crow circled with a crystal lamp and a smile gentle enough to make cruelty sound medicinal. "My Alpha," Lavinia said, "the marks are more extensive than reported." A murmur moved across the terrace. Margot stood still. She was 42 winters old enough for court girls to pity her, young enough for men to still expect gratitude when they looked twice. Pale moon marks crossed her skin in thin, branching lines. Over one shoulder, along her arm, across her collarbone, and down the side the inspection robe failed to guard. They were not fresh wounds. They were not decorations. They were the record of nights she had survived, while other women slept through ceremonies they never knew had almost been stolen from them. But Moonveil did not ask what a woman's body had protected. It asked whether the body pleased the law. Margot felt every gaze as a hand the law had permitted but no decency had earned. Lavinia lifted the crystal lamp closer. The mating terrace requires clarity. Pack beauty law is not vanity. Whatever sentimental villagers claim, a lunar candidate's body must not carry distortion that could confuse mate scent, moon reflection, or public trust. Margot looked at Elias. He said nothing. The silence gave Lavinia permission to continue. "She is not a candidate," one noblewoman whispered. "She is too marked," another answered. "She should have withdrawn before forcing the Alpha to witness this. Forcing him." Margot almost smiled. They had summoned her. Ordered her to stand under moon inspection after Lavinia claimed old unregistered marks might interfere with tonight's mate bond readings. They had loosened her robe with official hands and called it procedure. Now her dignity was an inconvenience she had brought upon them. Elias finally spoke. "Margot." Her name hit harder than the whispers. She did not bow her head. "My Alpha." His jaw tightened at the formality. "Good. Let him feel one small edge." Why were these marks not entered in the body registry? Lavinia's smile deepened. Margot heard the trap before it closed. If she answered that she had hidden them, she was deceitful. If she answered that no one asked, she was careless. If she answered that the registry itself was indecent, she was dangerous. So she chose truth, because the registry records beauty, not service. A sound passed through the crowd, half shock, half appetite. Lavinia lowered her lamp with careful sadness. "There. You hear the resentment. Mature disappointment often dresses itself as moral courage." Margot turned to her. "Mature disappointment? My dear, no one blames a woman for grieving what the moon did not grant her. The moon granted me skin that kept living." The terrace went still. For one breath, Elias's eyes sharpened. So late, Lavinia had already reached for the next blade. "Living skin is not always suitable skin," the Beauty-Seer said. "The question before the terrace is not whether Mistress Elian deserves kindness. It is whether her body carries signs unfit for mating reflection." Unfit, there it was. The word every woman feared because it sounded official in public and rotted privately for years. Margot's fingers curled once at her sides, then loosened. She would not clutch the robe closed like shame was hers to hide. The robe exposed skin. The court exposed itself. Elias leaned forward. "Lavinia, enough." It was a command, but not a defense. Enough could mean the inspection had gone too far. It could also mean the evidence had been seen. Margot looked at him. You waited until enough of me had been measured. His face changed, not fully, but enough for pain to find him. Lavinia intervened softly. My Alpha, emotion is exactly why the right must remain impartial. If the pack sees you bend law for a woman you once favored, every bond tonight will be questioned. Once favored. The terrace consumed that phrase greedily. Margot felt old tenderness turn under her ribs like a knife finding an earlier wound. Yes, Elias had once favored her. Before Crown, before war, before Lavinia's beauty laws tightened around Moonveil like a jeweled noose, before his court learned to make maturity sound like decay. Elias's hand closed over the arm of his throne. Proceed with the reading, he said. He had chosen procedure before asking why the procedure needed her uncovered. The words landed quietly. That was worse. Margot felt the robe slip another inch as Lavinia lifted the crystal lamp. No one moved to fix it. No one protected her from being viewed as an object under law. Above them, the pack sky waited. Black, moonless, crowded with cold stars that had watched every mating rite since the first wolf swore not to bind what the moon had not blessed. Lavinia touched the lamp's light to the pale mark at Margot's shoulder. This pattern, she announced, suggests disruption. Margot looked. A faint tremor crossed the terrace. Not below. Above, one star shifted, then another. A thin silver line appeared in the sky, copying the mark across Margot's shoulder exactly. The crowd fell silent. Lavinia's lamp flickered. Elias stood. The pack sky drew a second line, then a third, until the heavens began wearing the shape of Margot Elian's scars. The sky was not praising her scars. It was recording what had struck them. The pack sky had not made Margot beautiful. It had only refused to let the court call survival distortion. That difference mattered, though half of Moonveil Terrace had already begun searching for a cleaner story to tell itself. Nobles stared upward at the silver lines crossing the black sky, then down at Margot, then quickly away, as if shame might become contagious if held too long. Lavinia Crow lowered her crystal lamp first. Of course she did. A woman who made law from beauty knew how to recover before ugliness found her. My Alpha, she said, voice calm enough to steady frightened people. The sky mirrors disruption. It does not interpret service. Margot looked at her. You call everything disruption once it refuses to flatter your law. A few wolves in the lower rows stirred. Elias remained standing beneath the antlered arch. The pack sky's silver pattern burned above him, line for line, mark for mark, until even his throne seemed smaller beneath it. He did not apologize. Good. Margot did not want regret that arrived before work. Stop the reading, Elias said. Lavinia turned toward him with careful alarm. My Alpha, if the right is halted under emotional pressure, every bond formed tonight may be contested. Then no bond forms tonight. The terrace went still. Not enough. But still, Elias looked to the moon scribes. Record the sky reflection under witness seal. Every line, every position. No Beauty-Seer edits the record. Lavinia's mouth tightened. You imply tampering. I imply nothing. I order witnesses. Margot stood where law had left her, silver robe loose at one shoulder, cold cutting through cloth and pride alike. No one touched her. No one adjusted the robe. Elias did not come forward to cover what he had allowed to be inspected. That restraint mattered. So did the delay that made restraint necessary. Lavinia recovered smoothly. If Mistress Elian is to remain, the body registry must be consulted. Pack law requires prior classification of visible marks before mating reflection. Margot laughed once, softly. Now you trust the registry. My dear, I have always trusted order. No. You trusted it when it made my body sound like a warning. Elias turned to the registry keeper. Bring Margot Elian's file. The woman hesitated. Lavinia glanced at her. The registry is sensitive. The terrace has already made her body public, Elias said. His voice roughened almost imperceptibly. The record will not be more sacred than her dignity. Margot looked at him then, not with gratitude, with the pain of hearing the right sentence too late. The registry keeper brought a narrow black folder sealed with moon wax. Elias broke it and opened the first page. Margot Elian, age 40, 2 winters, status unpaired, visible marks, pale branching moon lines, classification, distortion risk. The words were smaller than the shame they had carried. Lavinia spoke before the crowd could absorb them. Distortion risk is not condemnation. It is protective classification. Mate, reflection must be clean, or false bonds can attach to unstable patterns. Margot's voice stayed steady. My body did not fail beauty law. Beauty law failed to ask what my body carried. Elias turned another page. No service entry. No terrace duty. No moon strike record. He frowned. This file is incomplete. Lavinia's smile softened. Many older records are incomplete, my alpha, especially for women who were never formal candidates. Margot felt that one land, never formal candidates, as if usefulness without desirability had been the shape of her whole life. Elias looked toward the old record alcove. Bring the Moonveil service ledger. Lavinia stepped forward. That ledger concerns terrace maintenance, guard rotations, and rite preparation. It has no bearing on suitability. Bring it. The command cracked sharper this time. 2 scribes returned with a thick silver-grey book, its spine worn by years of hands that had likely never wanted it read aloud. Elias opened to the season of Margot's first marks. The page was torn out. He turned to the next. Another missing page. Then another. A low murmur spread through the terrace. Lavinia sighed. Old parchment fails. Moon damp is unkind to ink. Margot looked at the clean-cut edges. Moon damp uses knives now? For the first time, a few people did not hide their reaction. Elias turned pages faster. Moon reflection records followed the service ledger, bound separately in blue vellum. These had survived beautifully. That was its own accusation. He read silently. And Margot saw the moment the reports began speaking against the law. Right instability, he said. Lavinia's expression sharpened. Minor fluctuations. Elias continued. Mate, reflection nearly split. Candidate scent pulled toward unauthorized bond. Moon pressure redirected before binding. Margot's skin chilled. She remembered that night. She remembered standing behind the west pillar because Lavinia had ordered all older attendants out of sight. She remembered the terrace air turning wrong, the silver ache striking across her shoulder, the way she had bitten her own tongue to keep from crying out, while a young candidate smiled through a ceremony she never knew had almost been stolen. Elias looked up. Who redirected it? No one answered. Lavinia folded her hands. The terrace corrects itself. Margot shook her head. No. It uses whoever stands where the strike falls. Elias's gaze moved to her shoulder, then away at once, as if he had learned not to look without permission. Too late, but learned. He looked back to the record. The impact line matches the mark across her shoulder, Lavinia answered smoothly. Similarity does not make suitability. Service, if it occurred, does not make a body clean for mating law. Margot's voice cut through the cold. Do not call survival distortion because it refuses to look smooth under a lamp. The pack sky brightened once. Not choosing. Recording. The silver shoulder line above the terrace deepened, and another faint line appeared beside it, matching the mark along Margot's arm. Elias closed the registry file. Margot Elian is granted temporary moon. Witness standing for body registry, service ledger, and reflection records. Temporary. Witness. Not restored. Not believed fully. Not protected before the damage. Margot held his gaze. Do not call me witness while my body is still being treated as evidence against itself. His jaw tightened. He accepted the blow without defending himself. A scribe near the lower table lifted a loose sheet from inside the reflection ledger. My alpha. she whispered. "There is an older ceremony report tucked behind the binding. Elias took it. The parchment was brittle, unsigned, and marked with the old Moonveil crest." He read the first line aloud. "Unregistered female shield accepted moon strike in place of lunar candidates." The report did not yet name Margot. It only proved the law had once needed a body like hers before it learned to call such bodies damaged. The brittle report changed the question without answering it. That was why Lavinia Crow moved so quickly. "Unregistered female shield," she repeated, voice smooth beneath the silver sky. Not Margot Elian. Not even a named attendant. Moonveil had many women in service before the registry reforms. Margot stood in the cold with the inspection robe still loose from Law's handling and refused to fold herself smaller. "A nameless woman was useful enough to take the strike," she said. "Not useful enough to record." A few lower wolves murmured. Lavinia turned toward them with gentle warning. "Sympathy is not evidence. The Terrace cannot risk tonight's bonds because a vague old report resembles Mistress Elian's disappointment." Elias looked from the report to the silver lines in the pack sky. He did not apologize. He did not call Margot chosen. He did not step toward her with sudden tenderness, because tenderness after exposure would only make another performance. He gave orders. "Seal the ceremony report. Open its custody." The moon scribes moved fast. Wax, ribbon, witness marks, practical things. Late things. Margot watched them preserve the paper with more care than anyone had preserved her dignity at the beginning of the night. Elias saw her watching. His jaw tightened. She said quietly, "A king can suspend a bond and still leave the woman it stripped standing under witness law." The words reached him like a blade pushed in slowly. He did not defend himself. The report custody box was brought from the record alcove, a narrow iron chest smelling of dust and old moonwax. The keeper unlocked it with shaking hands. "Read the last transfer," Elias said. The keeper swallowed. "Report removed from open ceremony file during Beauty-Seer registry reform. Rehoused behind reflection ledger for comparative classification." The Terrace stilled. Lavinia did not. "That is proper archival practice," she said. "Reports concerning reflection anomalies belong near reflection records." Margot looked at her. "You moved service behind anomaly. I moved confusion where it could not damage public trust." "No," Margot said. "You hid the service and kept the scar." Elias turned a page in the custody list. "Who approved the registry reform?" Lavinia inclined her head. "I did, with council authority. Before your reign, my alpha." A clean answer, not confession. A wall with polished edges. Elias looked to the ledger keeper. "Bring the service ledger index." Lavinia's gaze sharpened. Indexes are often less reliable than full pages. Then the torn pages will not mind being checked against them. The index came in a smaller book bound in grey leather. Unlike the ledger, it had no torn pages. Its entries were cramped, practical, and ugly, in the way useful records often were. Elias opened to the first missing date. Margot Elian, West Pillar Service. Second missing date. Margot Elian, West Pillar Service. Third missing date. Margot Elian removed after moon pressure. For a moment, the Terrace forgot to breathe. Margot did not. Breathing had been how she survived the first strike. Slow, quiet, teeth together. Sound swallowed before young women turned and saw fear. Lavinia spoke into the silence. "Service presence does not prove shield function. Many attendants stood in those areas." Elias opened the reflection record beside the index. "Moon. Strike impact line. West pillar. Shoulder descent." The pack sky did not brighten. It did not need to. The recorded silver line above them already matched the mark at Margot's shoulder, and every witness had seen enough. Lavinia turned to the court. "Similarity does not make suitability. A woman may have served and still carry distortion risk. Mating law protects more than feelings." Margot faced her. My body did not confuse the right. It paid for its clarity. That landed harder than anger. An old guard at the terrace steps shifted. Elias saw him. You know something. The guard's beard was white, his spine bent, his uniform old enough to remember better tailoring. I stood west wall the night of the first, near Split, my alpha. Lavinia's voice softened. Old memories are tender things. The guard bowed his head. Tender, yes. False, no. Elias stepped aside, giving the man a clear path to speak before the pack. Tell it. The guard looked at Margot with something like shame. An older attendant was ordered out of sight before the candidates entered. Not dismissed. Hidden, behind the west pillar. By whom? Elias asked. The old man hesitated. Lavinia said, Many officers managed terrace placements. The guard nodded slowly. The order came through the Beauty-Seer's staff. Not Lavinia's mouth. Not her hand. Enough to open another door. Margot felt the old night return. The lamp smoke. The cold pillar. The sudden silver pressure cutting down through her shoulder while a candidate laughed under flowers, unaware of what had almost fastened itself to her scent. Elias turned another reflection page. Second, near Split. Arm impact. West pillar. The index entry below it read, Margot Elian retained after first strike. His hand stilled. Margot watched him find the next piece of what he should have asked before the robe was loosened. He looked up at her. You stood there more than once. Do not call me shield, she said, if you still mean to measure me as damage. His throat moved. Lavinia moved in before guilt could become action. My alpha. This is precisely the danger. Former attachment clouds judgment. Mistress Elian's history with you makes the court vulnerable to romantic reinterpretation of damaged records. Margot almost smiled. You once looked at me as warmth. Tonight you let them decide whether warmth had aged badly. Elias closed his eyes for one breath. When he opened them, he turned to the scribes. Margot Elian's temporary moon witness standing is extended to report custody, service index, reflection records, and terrace placement orders. Temporary again. Standing, not restoration. Access, not justice. Margot held his gaze. You looked at my marks as law before you remembered they were pain. I did, he said. Only that. Not apology. Not enough, but true enough to cost him. A young scribe at the ledger table lifted a torn edge from inside the index spine. My alpha. There is a stub caught under the binding. Elias crossed to her and took it carefully. The parchment fragment was narrow, cut from a page that should have been gone. He laid it beside the first report. The ink was faded, but the line remained readable. Monsieur Elian accepted second strike after Beauty-Seer ordered candidates kept visible. The stub did not yet prove Lavinia's mouth had given the order. It proved the Beauty-Seer's authority had kept the candidates visible, while Margot took the strike meant to find them. The torn line did not end the inquiry. It only gave the missing service a name. Margot Elian stood beneath the silver-mapped sky, while the court learned how slowly truth moved when powerful people had filed it away. The stub lay on the witness table beside the ceremony report, the service index, and the reflection records. Together, they did not yet condemn Lavinia Crow's mouth. They condemned her office. That was why Lavinia smiled as if the distinction could save her. My alpha, she said. Beauty. Seer. Staff act under terrace safety protocol. Candidate visibility is essential to bond clarity. If a staff member made an imperfect placement during a difficult night, that does not turn proper procedure into cruelty. Margot looked at her. Do not call it voluntary when the only choices were silence or another woman's ruin. The words did not rise. They did not need to. Elias stood beside the record table, face carved into stillness. He did not apologize. He did not call her mate. He did not offer his cloak like a public correction for a public exposure he had allowed to continue too long. He ordered the next door opened. Bring the terrace placement orders. Lavinia's gaze sharpened. Those records include candidate positions. They are private. The court has already treated Margot's body as public, Elias said. Do not ask privacy to protect the law after the law failed to protect her. Margot felt that sentence pass near her, not over her. Late. Useful. Still late. The placement orders arrived in a flat, silver case. Each sheet was marked by moon phase, candidate name, staff station, and reflection line. Elias opened the first near split night. Candidate visibility, maintained. Older attendance, removed from candidate sightline. West pillar. M. Elian. Lavinia spoke before the court's silence hardened. Removed from sightline does not mean hidden for harm. Attendants are often placed where ceremony requires them, Margot answered. You kept the candidates visible and hid the woman absorbing what visibility invited. A low sound moved from the lower pack. Not worship. Recognition. Elias turned to the second record. Candidate visibility. Maintained despite reflection strain. West pillar pressure. Redirected. Monsieur Elian retained. His eyes moved once to the mark along Margot's arm, then away immediately. He had finally learned that her body was not a document he could read without cost. Moon, strike impact line, he said to the scribe. The scribe compared the reflection record. Arm descent, my alpha. Matches the second recorded skyline. Lavinia's voice stayed calm. Service scars, if that is what we are calling them, still create distortion risk. A body may have been useful once and unsuitable later. Margot turned toward her fully. My scars are not where beauty failed. They are where your right survived. The pack sky did not flare. It did not choose sides. It only held the silver lines steady above them, refusing to let the terrace forget the shape it had tried to shame. Elias opened the Beauty-Seer staff roster. Names ran down the page in clean black ink. Placement Authority, Lamp Authority, Candidate Visibility Authority, Registry Classification Authority, all under Lavinia Crow's office. Not all under her personal signature. A careful system. A silk glove over every blade. Elias looked at the roster. Who handled placement on the second strike night? The registry keeper swallowed. Beauty-Seer staff captain. Under office protocol. Name. Corvin Hale. Summon him. Lavinia's mouth tightened. He died 3 winters ago. How convenient, Margot said. Lavinia looked at her with polished pity. Death is not conspiracy, Mistress Elian. No, but dead men make useful walls. The old guard at the terrace steps gave a rough breath that might have been agreement. Elias turned another page. Old candidate reports. Lavinia stepped forward. My alpha. Candidates were innocent in this. I know. That was why his voice had changed. A scribe brought a thin blue folder. Elias opened the report from the second strike night. Candidate. Sorel Voss. Reflection result. Clean. Mate bond nearly pulled toward unauthorized scent. Instability corrected before candidate awareness. Candidate informed. No. Margot remembered Sorel. 18 winters. White flowers braided into black hair, hands trembling with excitement. Laughing because no one had told her the terrace had almost fed her heart to a false bond. Elias read the line again, lower this time. Candidate informed. Lavinia's reply came smooth. Protection from unnecessary distress. Margot's voice cut through the air. You protected her from truth after using me to protect her from harm. The court had no clean answer for that. Elias looked at Margot. You knew? I knew enough to stay quiet when she smiled at me the next morning. Why? Because no one had made room in the law for a woman to say, I was damaged saving someone prettier. The sentence struck him so visibly that several wolves looked down. Lavinia seized on the pain. There, you hear the bitterness. This is why suitability matters. Resentment can deform reflection. Margot gave a tired, almost gentle smile. No, Lavinia. Reflection deformed when your law kept young women under moonlight during instability and hid older women behind pillars to absorb the consequence. Elias turned to the scribes. Margot Elian's temporary moon. Witness standing is extended to placement orders, Beauty-Seer staff rosters, candidate visibility orders, and candidate awareness reports. Temporary again. Evidence access. Not restored dignity. Margot held his gaze. A king can read my name in a torn ledger and still leave it outside the law. His hand tightened around the page. I know, he said. Again, only that. Not enough, but less false than comfort. The third placement order remained at the bottom of the silver case, sealed with old moon wax, and a Beauty-Seer crest pressed deep enough to scar the paper. Lavinia's face did not change. That was what made Margot watch her. Elias broke the seal. The paper opened with a dry sound that carried across the terrace. Third near-split night. Candidate visibility. Maintained. West pillar shield. Monsieur Elian. Registry handling. Private. Then the final line. Written in small, controlled script beneath the placement order. Do not enter Monsieur Elian in service ledger. Classify visible result under body registry. The third order made the body registry look less like a record and more like a hiding place. No one said that aloud at first. Moonveil Terrace had been trained to respect beautiful paperwork. A clean seal. A narrow script. A classification written in the right hand could make harm look like administration, but the line remained there under the cold stars. Do not enter Monsieur Elian in service ledger. Classify visible result under body registry. Margot stared at it until the letters stopped being ink and became the nights she had swallowed. Behind the west pillar, behind flowers, behind younger women smiling under moonlight while the strikes meant to twist their bonds found her instead. Lavinia Crow folded her hands. Private classification prevents ceremonial panic. It does not erase service. Margot looked at her. Then, why did you put my body where service disappeared? The lower pack stirred again. Lavinia turned the movement into warning. My alpha, this is no longer inquiry. This is a crowd learning anger before context. Elias lifted the placement order. His face was calm, but the calm had turned dangerous. Then we will provide context. Lavinia's gaze sharpened. Through whose interpretation? Through records you have not chosen. He turned to the guards. Seal the mating terrace. No candidate leaves, no beauty. Seer staff removes a file, and no registry book closes until I say so. A hard silence followed. It cost him. Margot saw that at once. The mating rite was not a small ceremony. It tied houses, stabilized alliances, and measured power beneath the pack moon. Suspending it in front of every noble family was not tenderness. It was damage to his own throne. Still, she did not soften. A king could bleed reputation and still leave a woman's name misfiled. Elias turned toward her once, as if the sight of her standing cold under witness law had become something he could no longer endure. He did not reach for her. Good. Open the beauty law registry vault, he ordered. Lavinia stepped forward. My alpha. Those laws protect the pack from false scent, reflection rupture, and unstable mating bonds. Then they will not fear witnesses. Margot's robe shifted in the wind. An attendant finally moved, with a folded cloak, eyes down. Elias saw her and stopped her with one word. No. The terrace froze. Lavinia's mouth curved faintly, ready to use it. Then Elias looked at Margot. No one touches her unless she asks. The attendant lowered the cloak. Margot understood the difference. He was not covering what he had exposed. He was returning the right to decide who came near. Late, still late, she took the cloak herself from the attendant's hands and set it over her shoulders without thanking the king. Lavinia's voice stayed soft. You see, she interprets even care as insult. Resentment distorts everything. Margot fastened the cloak at her throat. Care that waits for witnesses is not care. It is correction. Elias closed his eyes once. When he opened them, he faced the registry keeper. Read the classification history. The vault was not far from the terrace, built into the moonstone wall behind the antlered arch. Its door opened with 3 keys: Alpha, Beauty, Seer, and Registry Keeper. Lavinia handed over hers with perfect dignity. Inside were shelves of black folders, women reduced to words: suitable, clean, fertile, unmarked, distortion risk, reflection concern, public trust failure. Margot looked at those labels and felt every older woman on the terrace shrink from memory. Elias saw them too. His voice was lower when he spoke. Who wrote the current body registry law? The keeper answered carefully. Beauty-Seer Lavinia Crow revised it after the 3rd reflection instability. Lavinia inclined her head. At council request, the pack needed standards. Margot looked at the shelves. Standards for what a woman should survive without leaving evidence? Lavinia's eyes cooled. Standards for what the moon can safely reflect. Elias opened the oldest classification book. Before Lavinia's reform, visible moonstrike marks were listed differently. Service contact, terrace impact, protective exposure. He turned the page. After reform, distortion risk, suitability concern, inspection required. The terrace went quiet in a new way. Not awe, recognition beginning to hurt. Elias looked at Lavinia. Your reform changed service language into body defect. Lavinia answered smoothly. Because marks left on the body can affect mate reflection, a past function does not guarantee present safety. Margot stepped closer to the book. You did not just rename me. You taught the pack how to look at me. For the first time, Elias flinched. Not dramatically, worse, precisely. Because he had looked exactly as the law taught him. He turned to the scribes. Enter that comparison into public record. Lavinia's voice sharpened. You would shame every woman classified under this law? No, Margot said before Elias could answer. The law already did that. Reading it only stops the shame from staying private. Several women in the noble rows lowered their eyes. One, older than Margot, touched the high collar hiding her throat. Elias noticed. So did Margot. So did Lavinia. The Beauty-Seer moved quickly. My Alpha, if old strike marks are recast as service, candidates may claim protection after the fact to avoid suitability review. The right will lose trust. Margot turned toward the pack sky. The silver lines still held her shape, not glowing brighter, not crowning her, simply refusing to disappear. These marks are not a plea, she said. They are a record. Elias looked at the registry shelves for a long moment. Then he took the crystal inspection lamp from Lavinia's table, the same lamp that had been held against Margot's skin. Lavinia stepped forward. My Alpha. He laid it on the stone before the entire pack. Until this inquiry closes, Beauty-Seer Lavinia Crow is suspended from conducting body inspection, registry classification, and mating reflection review. A shock moved through the terrace. Not final justice, but a real cost. Lavinia's face went pale beneath her moon powder. You risk every bond tonight for a woman once favored by you. Elias's voice turned cold. No, I risked a woman once favored by me for every bond tonight. Margot's breath caught before she could stop it. He did not look to her for comfort. That saved the sentence from becoming performance. The old registry keeper reached into the pre-reform book with trembling fingers. My Alpha, there is a protected appendix. Read it. The keeper unfolded a thin vellum sheet, older than Lavinia's law. At the top was a title written in faded silver ink, Moonstrike Protection Patterns. The first diagram showed a branching mark over shoulder and arm, Margot's exact scars. Below it, one line waited like a door opening under the sky. Not distortion, living ward against forced mate bond attachment. The old appendix did what the crystal lamp had refused to do. It gave the marks a purpose before it judged their shape. Moonstrike protection patterns. Living ward against forced mate bond attachment. The words lay beneath the silver diagram in faded ink, so plain that the terrace seemed to struggle with them. Nobles leaned forward as if better posture might change the sentence. Younger candidates, still dressed in pale mating gowns, touched their own throats and wrists with frightened fingers. Margot did not touch her scars. She had spent too many years resisting the urge to hide them. Lavinia Crowe found her voice before anyone else found courage. "Ancient terminology," she said. "Pre-reform. Symbolic at best. Dangerous if misapplied." Margot looked at her. "You called my body dangerous when you wanted it measured. Now the record calls it protective, and danger still belongs to me." Lavinia's eyes cooled. "A ward can protect one right and distort another. That is exactly why Beauty-Seer law requires classification." Elias stood over the appendix, the inspection lamp lying dark at his feet. "Read the full entry." The registry keeper swallowed. "Living ward marks form when moon pressure meant for an unanchored candidate is absorbed by a shield body. Repeated strikes may leave pale branching lines. Such marks must be entered in service ledger before body registry. Shield bearer must not be subjected to purity inspection." The last sentence moved through the terrace, like a hand striking stone. "Must not be subjected to purity inspection." Margot felt the words arrive too late to save her from the lamp, the robe, the watching mouths. Elias's face changed, not into softness, into damage he could not hide. He did not apologize. He turned to the scribes. "Enter the appendix into public record. Compare it with Margot Elian's registry classification." Lavinia stepped closer. "My Alpha, the old appendix does not prove her marks remain stable. Forced bond risks require Beauty-Seer interpretation. You are suspended from interpretation. For this moment," Lavinia said carefully. "Not from knowledge." Margot gave a small, tired laugh. "Knowledge did not trouble you while I stood under your lamp." The lower pack murmured again. Elias looked toward the candidate rows. "Bring the reflection records from the current rite." A young scribe paled. "The rite was not completed, my Alpha." "Then bring the incomplete record." The record came in a thin moon glass frame, still warm from the terrace altar. Inside, pale lines moved like trapped breath. Candidate scents, moon positions, bond threads waiting to settle. One thread twisted wrong, then another, all bending toward the same hidden point behind the west pillar. Margot knew that pull. Her skin remembered before her mind named it. The mark across her arm burned cold. A candidate gasped. "Is that supposed to happen?" Lavinia turned sharply. "Do not panic. Incomplete rites often show unstable lines before final blessing." Margot looked at the moon glass frame. "No, that is the shape before a bond is taken." The candidate began trembling. She was young, barely 20, her gown embroidered with silver leaves. "Taken?" Elias's voice kneh. "Explain." Margot hated that every face turned to her now, not with mockery but need. Need could be another way to use a woman before naming what she was owed. Still, she answered the girl, not the court. A forced attachment does not break the right at first. It borrows it. The moonline pulls your scent towards someone not chosen by your wolf, and by the time you feel love, it is already wearing a leash. The candidate covered her mouth. Lavinia's tone sharpened. "This is irresponsible fear." Margot turned. "My body did not imagine the strikes." "No," Lavinia said. "But pain can make a woman believe she understands what only trained seers should handle." Elias lifted the moon glass frame toward the pack sky. The silver pattern above them answered not by crowning Margot, not by calling her Luna, but by drawing the same bent thread across the stars. Candidate line, false pull, west pillar impact. Record matching record. Old appendix, Elias said. Current right record. Pack sky reflection. All three show forced attachment pressure. Lavinia's mouth tightened. Pressure, not perpetrator. Agreed, he said. That surprised the court. It surprised Lavinia more. Elias placed the frame beside the appendix. So we continue with records, not magic. Margot looked at him then. That was the first wise thing he had said all night. Still, wisdom after harm was not absolution. The old registry keeper turned another appendix page. There is a required response. Read it, Elias ordered. If living ward marks appear, the shield bearer must be named in Moonveil service law, exempt from beauty inspection, and granted refusal authority over further ward exposure. Refusal authority. Margot felt the phrase enter her body like breath after being held too long. Lavinia spoke quickly. That clause was removed because it allowed emotionally unstable women to obstruct mating rights. Removed by whom? Elias asked. The keeper looked at the reform record, then at Lavinia. Lavinia's voice stayed calm. By council approval during registry modernization. Again, not confession. Procedure. Always procedure. Margot looked at the old law, then at the girls in pale gowns, then at the terrace where she had once stood hidden because no one wanted a marked woman in the moonlight unless she was absorbing what could ruin someone else. My marks are not a plea, she said. They are a record, and if the law removed my right to refuse, then the law learned theft from beautiful mouths. Elias looked down. For one breath, the Alpha King seemed less like a throne and more like a man seeing the cost of every silence he had called order. Then the current right frame shivered. The bent bond threads inside tightened suddenly, pulling hard toward the west pillar where Margot had once stood. The young candidate cried out. Margot stepped back. Not toward the pillar. Away from it. Elias saw the movement. Margot? Her voice was quiet, but every wolf heard it. No, not again because you finally need me. The moon glass frame cracked, and from beneath Lavinia's darkened inspection lamp, a hidden thread of silver light snapped toward the candidate's heart. The girl moved before the court did. Not far, only one frightened step toward the place Lavinia's staff had marked for her beneath the moonline. Margot saw the mistake at once. So did her skin. The old marks along her arm burned cold, not as summons, not as destiny, but as memory recognizing the shape of harm returning. Stop, Margot said. The candidate froze. Lavinia's voice cut across hers. Remain in position. Do not let fear interrupt bond alignment. Margot turned on her. That is how you make them easy to take. A terrible silence followed. The silver thread from the darkened inspection lamp tightened, thin as a hair and bright as a blade. It stretched toward the candidate's chest, seeking the open place where a true mate bond should one day answer. Elias moved down from the arch. What do we do? Weigh. The word struck Margot harder than command would have. He had not said, what must you do? He had not said, stand where the strike falls. Still, she did not forgive him for learning the right pronoun after her body had become a lesson. Move her out of the moon line, Margot said. Do not send me into it. Lavinia stepped forward. Removing a candidate mid-alignment could damage her reflection for life. Margot did not look away from the girl. Staying could give your heart a voice that is not yours. The candidate began to tremble. Elias turned to the guards. Clear the candidate row. Now. Lavinia's face sharpened. My Alpha, you risk every alliance represented tonight. No alliance is worth a stolen bond. The guards moved. Some nobles protested. Mothers clutched daughters. Fathers demanded explanation. The terrace filled with the sound of silk, fear, and old authority losing balance. Margot stayed still. Her body wanted to go to the west pillar. It remembered obedience before it remembered safety. Years of being useful had trained her feet toward pain faster than pride could stop them. She forced herself back one step, then another. Elias saw. His hand lifted halfway, not touching her, not reaching the way a man reached when he wanted to turn rescue into possession. He closed his fist at his side. "Good. Do not touch what you allowed them to inspect," Margot said quietly. "I won't." The answer was immediate. Not apology. Obedience to the boundary. That was all she could accept. The first candidate was pulled from the moon line. The silver thread snapped sideways, searching. It struck the empty air where her heart had been and recoiled toward the lamp. The pack sky did not flare. It only held the earlier lines above them, witness to impact, not judge of guilt. Lavinia's voice rose, still controlled but sharper now. "You are letting an emotionally compromised woman dismantle a sacred rite." Margot faced the court. "No. I am letting women step out of a position your staff told them was safe." One young candidate turned to Lavinia. "You told us not to move, even if the moonline burned." Lavinia softened instantly. "Because panic ruins reflection, sweet girl. Or because still hearts are easier targets," Margot said. The candidate's mother made a sound like a wounded wolf. Elias looked to the moon scribes. "Enter. Candidate instruction records into inquiry." Lavinia's eyes flashed. "You cannot halt every custom because one night frightened you." "One night?" Margot repeated. She pointed to the service index, the torn stub, the registry classification, the old appendix, the current right frame cracked on the altar stone. "These marks are not a plea. They are a record. And your record has dates." The old guard stepped forward again. "There were more nights." Lavinia turned on him with soft disappointment. "Old man." He bowed his head. "Yes. Old enough to remember being told not to see." The lower pack stirred. Elias faced him. "How many?" "Enough that Mistress Elian stopped crying out." Margot closed her eyes once. Only once. When she opened them, she was still standing. No one had the right to see her break, because they had finally decided to count. Lavinia reached for the dark inspection lamp. "The device must be secured." Margot's voice cut hard. "Do not touch it." Lavinia's hand stopped. Every eye went to her. A small thing, a hand above a lamp. A gesture too quick to matter, unless one had lived years watching procedure become cover. Elias saw it too. "Step back from the lamp." Lavinia's smile returned by force. "My Alpha, I am the only trained Beauty-Seer here. You are suspended. From classification, not from preventing danger." Margot looked at Elias. "Listen to how power keeps finding a remaining title." He did. "Guards," Elias said. "Remove the lamp from Lavinia's reach, under witness seal." The moment the guards lifted the lamp, the hidden silver thread inside it writhed like a living thing trapped under glass. The candidates cried out. Margot did not move toward it. She would not let fear pull her back into service, without law, name, or choice. "My temporary standing ends here," she said. Elias turned. "Margot, no." Her voice remained steady. "Do not say my name like a bridge." The terrace fell silent. She drew the cloak tighter around herself because she chose to, not because shame commanded it. "I will not stand behind another pillar. I will not absorb another strike while my service remains temporary and my body remains classified as risk. If Moonveil wants protection, it can begin by naming the women it used." Lavinia seized the moment. "So you abandon the candidates?" Margot looked at the young women being led from the moonline. "No, I taught them to move." Elias absorbed that like a sentence against his throne. Then he stepped aside. No command to stay. No plea. No hand. "Let her pass," he said. Margot walked off Moonveil Terrace, while the pack sky held her marks above the court, and the sealed inspection lamp beat silver against its glass. At the stair below, a scribe ran after Elias with a newly opened candidate instruction roll. "My Alpha, she called, voice shaking. The current candidates were ordered to remain visible even during rupture warning. Elias took the roll. The final line was written under Lavinia's office seal. If shield body withdraws, redirect pressure through registered distortion risk. The instruction roll made every candidate step farther from the moonlight, not because they understood the law, because they understood being named as something a ritual could spend. Elias held the roll beneath the antlered arch, the silver lamp sealed on the witness table behind him, still beating faintly against its glass. Margot was no longer on the terrace. The place where she had stood felt colder for her absence. Lavinia Crowe looked toward that empty space first. Then she looked at the terrified candidates. "My Alpha," she said. "Emergency redirection is a protective contingency. A registered distortion risk is not a person being punished. It is a body already identified as capable of absorbing unstable pressure." One older woman in the noble rose made a broken sound. Elias turned toward her. She lowered her hand from the high collar at her throat too late. A pale mark showed beneath it. Lavinia saw it and went still. Elias did not miss that. "Open the distortion risk registry," he said. Lavinia stepped forward. "That registry is private. So was Margot's body until your law made it public." The words cut through the terrace. Not apology, not enough. But the first time he used his shame as a blade against the law that had taught him to look wrongly. The registry keeper hesitated with the black folder clutched to her chest. "My Alpha. There are many names. Then the pack will learn how many women it taught itself not to see." Lavinia's voice cooled. "You are turning necessary classification into spectacle." "No," Elias said. "I am ending the spectacle your office built." He took the folder and placed it on the witness table, beside the sealed lamp, the torn ledger stub, the placement orders, and the old appendix. He did not ask the pack's guy to prove anything more. He did not look upward for permission. He opened records. First name, Margot Elian. Distortion risk. Available redirect body. Used 3 times. The terrace made a sound that was almost breath and almost guilt. Second name, Selda Mar. Throat mark. Available redirect body. Used once. The older woman with the high collar closed her eyes. Elias looked at her. "Were you told?" She shook her head. Lavinia answered for her. "Informing unstable bodies of technical use could create panic and prevent safe rights." Selda Mar lifted her chin. "I thought I was ashamed because I aged badly." No one spoke. That sentence did what records could not. It showed the private life of a public lie. Elias's hand tightened on the folder. "Read every name." Lavinia's calm thinned. "My Alpha, that will expose women who trusted registry privacy." Margot's voice came from the stair. "She means it will expose the law that taught them privacy was the price of shame." Every head turned. Margot stood below the terrace arch, cloak fastened at her throat, face pale but steady. She had not returned because Elias called her. He had not. She had returned because another woman's collar had slipped. Elias did not move toward her. He only stepped aside, opening the path to the record table without making it his invitation. Margot saw the space. She took it. Lavinia's eyes narrowed. "Mistress Elian, your withdrawal was noted. Returning now suggests you understand the danger of leaving trained authority without guidance." Margot looked at the sealed lamp. "No. I returned because your trained authority had a list of women it could use without telling them." Elias turned to the scribes. "Candidate instruction records, distortion, risk registry, and redirection protocols are opened under public inquiry. Beauty-Seer Lavinia Crowe remains suspended from all right authority." Lavinia's voice sharpened. "You cannot run Moonveil through outrage. I can stop it from running on hidden bodies." A low growl moved through the lower pack. Not wild. Protective. Margot looked at Elias then, and he felt the look land. It did not forgive. It measured whether his action continued when she gave him nothing back. He continued. Every candidate is released from terrace position. No woman remains in Moonline under command. No registered mark may be used for redirection without informed refusal authority. The candidates began to move. Some wept quietly. Some looked furious. One young woman removed her flower crown and dropped it onto the stone as if it had become too heavy to wear. Lavinia turned to the council benches. This is reckless. If the rupture resumes, the false bond may attach to anyone. Margot stepped beside the witness table. Then let the right fail before it feeds on a woman you taught the court to call damaged. Elias looked at the sealed lamp. What is inside it? Lavinia's answer came too late. Reflection residue. Margot shook her head. No. A redirect thread. Elias ordered the old registry keeper. Open the lamp custody. The keeper found the record. In Lavinia's case. Inspection lamp assigned to Beauty-Seer office after third instability. Private modification. Redirect capture. Approved under registry reform. Lavinia did not confess. She did not need to. Procedure kept speaking with her accent. Elias lifted the record. This lamp was modified after Margot Elian's third strike. Lavinia's jaw tightened. To prevent future loss of control. By controlling whom? Silence. Margot answered. Women already taught to think their bodies were the problem. The sealed lamp pulsed hard. A silver thread snapped against the glass, searching, then struck the registry folder. The black pages fluttered violently, stopping on a hidden appendix tucked behind the list of marked women. Elias opened it. His face went still. Margot read the title before he spoke. Reserve shield bodies for Beauty-Seer emergency use. Below it were 12 names. 7 had been crossed out. The crossed-out names did not make the terrace gasp. They made it remember. One by one, women looked at collars, gloves, sleeves, veils, and old choices they had mistaken for modesty. 7 names crossed through on Lavinia Crow's hidden appendix. 7 bodies used until no further use could be taken from them. 5 names remaining. Margot's was not crossed out. That was not mercy. It was inventory. Lavinia spoke before the silence could become a verdict. Reserve classification is an emergency category. Crossed-out names may indicate release, death, marriage, relocation, or instability. It is irresponsible to turn administrative marks into accusation. Margot looked at the page. Administrative marks. Her voice was quiet enough that everyone leaned toward it. Is that what you called us when you taught us to hide our throats? Seldamar stepped forward, one trembling hand still near her collar. My name is on that page. Lavinia's expression softened. Selda, you are distressed. No, Selda said. I am late. The terrace shifted. That one sentence did more than anger could. Margot turned to the candidates, the older women, the attendants, the widows seated behind noble daughters, the quiet wives who had learned to sit under moonlight and keep their shame covered. Names, she said. Elias looked at her, not startled, not leading, waiting. Margot faced him. If you mean to keep reading, then do not read us as categories. He turned to the scribes. Enter names, not classifications. Lavinia's voice sharpened. My alpha, public naming may harm these women. Margot looked at her. Your law harmed us in private. Truth does not become cruel because witnesses arrive. One by one, women spoke. Selda Mar, throat mark, used once. Hester Vale, wrist mark, redirected during winter rite. Nora Kale, back mark, listed as reflection concern. Maud Yvonne, no longer living. Remembered by her sister, who stood with both hands clenched and said, she thought no mate wanted her because her skin had spoiled. The terrace did not kneel. Good. Margot did not need worship. She needed the air to hold what silence had buried. Elias stood at the record table with the black registry open before him. His face had lost the beautiful distance of kingship. What remained was worse for him. Attention. He looked at Margot. "What do you require?" entered. Lavinia moved at once. "My Alpha. She is not authorized to rewrite registry law." Margot answered before Elias could. "No. I am authorized to know what my body was used for." A growl rolled from the lower pack. Elias did not quiet it. Margot lifted the hidden appendix. "Strike the words, reserve shield bodies." The scribe froze. Elias said, "Write her words." Lavinia's control thinned. "This is vengeance disguised as reform." Margot turned toward her. "Vengeance would be letting young candidates stand under your lamp and calling it tradition." A candidate began to cry. Margot softened only for her. "Look at me." The girl did. "My marks are not a warning of what you become when beauty fails. They are what happens when a law lets another woman be used so you never learn danger stood near you." The candidate removed the silver ribbon from her hair and laid it beside the registry folder. "I do not want a bond bought that way," she whispered. Another candidate followed. Then another. Lavinia's lips parted, then closed. Elias turned to the council benches. No mating right resumes while any candidate remains under visibility order. Any marked woman remains classified as redirection body, or any inspection lamp remains under Beauty-Seer authority. "My Alpha," Lavinia said. "You are dismantling the right during active rupture risk. I am dismantling the part that feeds rupture with women's silence." Margot looked at him then. That was action. It was still not enough to erase the terrace, the robe, the lamp, the way he had waited until enough of her had been measured. She said, "A king can stop the law and still owe the women it already used." His jaw tightened. "Then name the debt." Margot stood straighter. Not as witness, not as shield, as herself. Reclassify every living ward mark as service scar unless the woman herself names it otherwise. Restore every missing service ledger page. Correct every moon strike record. Ban public body inspection. Give women refusal authority before any mating right uses their presence, scent, mark, or body as protection. Lavinia laughed once, very softly. "You would place scarred women above the moon." Margot's answer came clean. "No. I would stop placing them beneath everyone else." The pack's sky held its silver marks without changing. It did not crown her. It witnessed the law finally hearing what the sky had only recorded. Elias took the quill. He did not sign first. He handed it to Selda Mar, then Hester Vale, then Nora Cale, then Maud Evans' sister, then the candidates. Only after the women marked the order did he sign beneath them. Last, he offered the quill to Margot. Their fingers did not touch. She made sure of it. He let her. Margot wrote her name in full. Margot Elian, living ward. Refusal authority. The words struck the page harder than any title Lavinia had ever withheld. The sealed inspection lamp screamed, not like metal, like a bond being dragged from where it had hidden. The glass cracked from inside, and silver thread burst across the witness table, racing not toward Margot this time, but toward Lavinia's private case. Elias opened it before Lavinia could move. Inside lay a second ledger bound in white skin-thin vellum. On the first page, written in Lavinia's careful hand, was a list of forced pairings approved after each hidden shield use. Lavinia's private ledger did not scream. That made it worse. It lay open beneath the pack sky in perfect handwriting, calm as prayer, each forced pairing approved after a hidden shield use. Dates, candidate names, bond outcomes, Beauty-Seer notes. No blood on the page. No madness in the ink. Only procedure polished until cruelty could pass for governance. Elias read the first entry, then the second. By the third, the terrace understood. Lavinia Crow had not only hidden women like Margot behind pillars, she had used the pressure they absorbed to stabilize pairings her office preferred, calling every wound that remained on them distortion risk. Lavinia lifted her chin. Those pairings were approved under emergency authority. The pack needed stable alliances. Margot looked at the ledger, then at the young candidates standing with loosened ribbons in their hands. A stable cage is still a cage. A mother in the noble rose began to weep. Elias did not comfort her. He did not comfort anyone. He stood in front of the pack with the ledger open and let the shame remain visible. "Read every name," he ordered. The scribe's voice shook, but she obeyed. Names entered the cold. Candidates who had believed love had chosen them. Women who had stood hidden to absorb moonstrike pressure. Marked bodies renamed defective. False pairings approved after forced redirection. Lavinia did not confess. She did not need to. Her system had been careful enough to survive emotion and foolish enough to trust records. Elias turned to the council. Beauty-Seer Lavinia Crow is removed from office. Her staff chain, registry reforms, reflection ledgers, and private pairings will be submitted to full pack judgment. Lavinia's face hardened. "You will fracture half the noble bonds in Moonveil." "No," Margot said. "The fracture was already there. You only taught women to mistake it for devotion." The pack sky brightened once. Not crowning her, not naming her Luna, only holding the silver map of her scars above every record that had tried to make them shame. Elias faced the terrace. "I let this court look at Margot Elian before I asked what her body had protected," he said. "I allowed procedure to uncover her, measure her, and turn her pain into public judgment. I did not create Lavinia's law, but I enforced it when my silence gave it teeth." No one moved. Margot's breath caught, but she did not soften for him. "Not yet," Elias continued, voice rough but steady. "No woman in Moonveil will ever again be inspected as a public object for mating suitability. Body registry law is abolished. Moonstrike marks are to be reviewed as possible service scars, never defects, and only the woman who bears them may name what they mean." The old registry keeper began writing. Elias turned to Margot. "Living ward authority stands before any mating right. Refusal authority stands above terrace protocol." Margot held his gaze. "Not mine alone." His jaw tightened. "No, not yours alone." He looked to Zelda, Hester, Nora, Maud's sister, the candidates, the attendants, and every woman whose hand had marked the reform order. A council of living wards and service witnesses will review all past rights, restore missing ledger pages, correct moonstrike records, and name every woman used in silence. Compensation will be paid from Crown Stores and Beauty-Seer holdings. Lavinia laughed softly. "You give scarred women governance over the moon." Margot stepped forward, not toward Elias, toward Lavinia. "No," she said. "We take back governance over ourselves." The terrace answered not with kneeling, but with movement. High collars opened. Gloves came off. Sleeves rolled back. Not every woman revealed a mark. Not every woman needed to. The power was not in display. It was in the end of forced hiding. The pack sky slowly changed. The silver pattern of Margot's scars loosened from her shape and spread outward, connecting to smaller lines above Zelda, Hester, Nora, and the spaces where dead women's names had just been spoken. A constellation of service, not beauty. A record of impact, not selection. The sealed inspection lamp cracked completely. The silver thread inside spilled onto the stone and withered under the open sky, unable to find another hidden body to use. Lavinia watched it die. For the first time, she looked afraid. Elias gave the final order. "Break every inspection lamp." One by one, guards shattered them on the terrace stones. No blood, no spectacle, only glass losing authority. When the last lamp broke, the mating terrace changed shape without moving. It no longer felt like a place where women waited to be measured. It felt like a place that would have to ask permission before touching anyone's future. Margot stood beside the witness table, cloak fastened by her own hand, her name written where the law could not erase it again. Elias approached only to the distance she had allowed all night. "May I speak?" She looked at him. "As Alpha, as the man who failed you before he understood the cost. That is not softer. No, he said. It is truer. The answer unsettled her more than pleading would have. He lowered the thorned silver crown from his head and set it on the witness table beside the abolished registry. I do not ask you to trust me because I finally saw you. I ask for the right to keep repairing what I helped harm, even if you never return to me. Margot looked at the crown, then at him. You once looked at me as warmth, she said. Tonight, you let them decide whether warmth had aged badly. I did, and desire now does not equal protection. I know. Do you? His voice was low. I am learning that protection begins before beauty is praised, before shame is public, before a woman must become evidence to be believed. For a long moment, only the wind moved over Moonveil. Margot turned toward the women whose names had been restored, the candidates who would not be bound that night, the old guard who wept silently at the stair, and the pack sky holding every service line without turning any woman into a crown. I will not be Luna because your court finally ran out of lies, she said. Elias bowed his head. Then be whatever you choose. She almost smiled. Almost. I will lead the living ward council until every record is corrected. After that, I will decide what I want from my life. And from me? Margot looked at his open hand, waiting at his side, asking nothing. At last, she placed her fingers in his palm. Not as surrender, not as reward. As a beginning, she controlled. Stand beside the law you broke, she said. Then we will see whether my heart believes what your mouth has learned. Elias closed his hand gently around hers. The pack sky stayed wide above them, not choosing Margot for anyone, but recording at last what Moonveil had tried to hide. Her scars were not shame. They were service. And from that night forward, no woman in Moonveil had to become beautiful enough to deserve protection.